Hello, my name is Justin McClue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, we're visiting the asylum.
So I'm here at the local video store, and I'm looking at the shelf, and what I really want to see is my favorite movie of the summer, Transformers.
Oh, it's right there. They have like 10 copies available. I'm shocked because you think they wouldn't be there.
I mean, it seems it's still playing in theaters, and yet here it is. And big robot on the cover. Wait, there seems something a little off about this.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a poster you haven't seen before.
Here we are back at home, and we're about to watch my favorite movie, Transformers. This looks a little low rent.
Yeah. Maybe my memory played tricks on me. I was very intoxicated when I saw it last.
Wait a minute, this isn't Transformers at all. It's TRANSMORPHERS.
And it was released by a company called The Asylum, the same people that put out H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds and Age of Hobbits.
Princess of Mars, that was an Avatar ripoff. I Am Omega.
Atlantic Rim.
Yes.
Atlantic Rim 2, some other subtitle.
And who could forget Sharknado 1 through 5?
Isn't there like a 6th one coming out soon?
Sure, why not? They call themselves The Asylum, but really they should be in jail.
So, The Asylum is a company that makes mockbusters. They've admitted it at this point, where they piggyback off of the name of popular films that are coming out, and they just want to essentially trick people, because that's how they can make revenues. People think that the movie that they're about to watch is the big famous one, and it's not. They've existed since 1997. They were founded by David Michael Latt, David Ramawi, and Sherry Strain in 1997. Their first in-house production was called Death Valley, The Revenge of Bloody Bill, but their first mockbuster was the aforementioned H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. And I have a friend who actually rented it, thinking it was a Steven Spielberg film, and was like, I guess it already came out. Went home, watched it, and realized, whoa, this is really low rent. I didn't think Steven Spielberg would have made this. And there was nudity on screen, and he was like, well, nope, this is not the Steven Spielberg film.
I think the first time I became aware of The Asylum was with their movie Snakes on a Train, which came out months before Snakes on a Plane did.
That's probably why Snakes on a Plane didn't have the success that it did, is that the train just grabbed all that money from the get-go.
Yeah, that's why.
I mean, let's be honest that I have no problem with them doing this piggyback technique. If it gets people to watch their films, make the money, all the power to them.
I have mixed feelings about that. I don't particularly care about the idea that they're, stealing money from the pockets of big corporations. Because let's face it, Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds did fine.
Yeah, The Hobbit did okay. Yeah, it's not like they're hurting the film. Like, there's no ads at the beginning of movies that say, don't watch mockbusters because you're taking jobs away from the everyman.
And the idea of taking money out of the pockets of innocent consumers and trading on their vulnerability.
I mean, that's a little bit more troublesome, you would say.
I don't like it. Although, on the other hand, if you rent Transmorphers and you think it's Transformers, maybe you should just pause for a second.
Reevaluate where you are.
And you know what? In this video on demand world, you can stop watching it after 2 minutes.
Yeah, so it's not even that big an issue. I read an article about them where one of the executives was like, we're in trouble. They were on the floor of the American film market, and they're like, now with the streaming platforms, they can review them, and our movies only have 1 star, so the buyers don't want to buy them.
Good. Good. You know what? Good.
That's maybe why they switched it to a thumbs up, a thumbs down model on Netflix.
Interesting.
But what really interests me about this company is not the fact that they just make mockbusters or rip-offs of other more popular movies. What fascinates me is, why aren't the movies more fun?
I want to psychoanalyze you for a minute here, because you're a filmmaker, you love making films.
Love it.
Your films have a lot of passion in them. I think you look at something like The Asylum, and you say, look at these people who have the great privilege and gift of being able to make a movie, which is not something that's very easy for a lot of people to do.
I mean, people will say, like, oh, anybody could pick up a phone and make a movie, but it's hard. Like, you have to organize people, you have to have all your ducks in a row. Like, it's not easy. And the fact that these people are doing stuff that companies that I've idolized, like even Full Moon or, the granddaddy of them all, Roger Corman, have done, is that they're making movies on their terms. They've even said that, like, they don't have investors. They make enough money through sales that they can actually just self-produce their own films, usually from like $250,000 to $850,000. They have a warehouse where they shoot a lot of them. They shoot them all in LA, which means that you'll have like shots of like a normal LA street and suddenly like a CGI dinosaur will run down, but no one's reacting. They edit the movies themselves. They have like their stock directors. The actors are like really faded stars like Urkel that can star in like a film where he fights a, I don't know, mega piranha or something like that. Crocosaurus.
Yeah, C. Thomas Howell, Tracy Lords. I'm guessing Eric Roberts has probably been in a few of them. I don't know.
So when you tell me that concept, what I assume I'll see are movies that aren't that good, but every now and then one will like come out of the herd and there'll be like a young, like really hungry filmmaker who's like giving it their all to make the best thing that they can make with the parameters they have to work with.
Yeah, and also the fact that it's like real down and dirty. You probably hope.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
It'll have a bit of a let's put on a show, fun quality to it. Like even the movies that Roger Corman was producing for New World Pictures in the 70s.
Like they were ripoffs, a lot of them.
Yeah, and most of them weren't that great, but a lot of them, a movie like, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto or, I don't know, even something like Candy Stripe Nurses or something, like there's a lightness to them.
And there would be a belief that if you're making a film that is confused with another film, you want that viewer to walk away from it going, oh, well, that was still pretty good. Like, it wasn't what I wanted, but, like, I still had a really fun time watching it. Like, if you're making H.G. Wells, like, War of the Worlds, you're going to be like, I'm going to make the best version of this that I can within the confines of what I have.
I also think that you look at The Asylum and you say, this is my dream job.
Yes, it is.
Like, you would love to have a week to make I Am Omega.
I would.
And
with Mark Dacascos?
Exactly.
I would love it.
And try to make it as great as possible under those circumstances.
Yeah. And what you end up getting is stuff like Transmorphers, which we both watched.
Boy, I wanted this to be more fun.
This is a textbook example of how not to make a movie. Like, you could put this, like, spend a whole class and just going, like, shot by shot, going, like, why is this decision incorrect at what they're trying to do?
Yeah.
So the story is like post-apocalyptic. The few human survivors have to take it out against these transmorphers, which are rendered in really cheap CGI. That doesn't bother me. What does bother me is the fact that there's like 40 characters and that the film is shot claustrophobic. You don't really know who anybody is. Nobody has any like traits or anything like that.
You don't really know the geography of this like ship that they're in.
And you know, I'm sure there's a lot of arguments that can be made, like, listen, we didn't even have a set to shoot on, we just had a wall, we didn't have much time, we only had 10 days, we had 100,000, not, like, tons of money, but it, like, doesn't excuse, like, how this film doesn't work.
Well, here's how you do it. Instead of having 20 characters or whoever many this has,
you have three or four,
Yeah, 3 or 4, and you have a love triangle, and boom, there's your movie.
You put them in a bunker, and the Transmorphers are outside. That's all it has to be.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, like, is it because they think people won't take them seriously if they don't have, like, 30 characters?
I have no idea. Like, it might just be straight up bad filmmaking.
Because, like, this brings in the eternal question of this podcast of, like, what is cheapness? And, like, what is acceptable to a mass audience that they can go, like, oh, I don't like this movie, but it doesn't look super cheap and bad. And, like, what goes through the mind of the people making the movies of, we need these core elements to be able to sell it to a market like China. Like, me and you, like, we don't understand what works when it comes to that kind of stuff,
like,
right?
like film financing, the demands of the global marketplace, and how those demands dictate the artistic decisions.
And it also may come down to, like, if you have a trailer that has, like, 30 people on screen, you know, some distributor in Germany may buy that movie because they're not going to watch the film. Most of them don't. They just buy it based on the trailer. So, like, is that enough?
I don't think that 25 Craigslist actors who all look exactly the same,
dress like Neo from The Matrix.
Yeah, I don't think that sells the movie. What sells the movie are the scenes with the Transmorphers, which are almost as boring as the on ship stuff.
Well, there's just like it doesn't take any money to have a setup and a payoff. Like, it shouldn't cost anything.
This movie has a first half, which is boring, and then a second action-packed half, which is equally boring. It doesn't feel like these battle scenes have any... you know, I hate
because this is what we have to talk about.
I hate this movie.
And it was directed by a man named Lee Scott, who directed 25 films.
Ugh.
Now, what does that mean? And a lot of them he made for The Asylum. Is it just that, like, he's a good worker? He just goes in, he delivers his films on time, he delivers a product that can kind of look like what people would buy? Because I think that's what it is.
I guess he does it on budget, but there is nothing in this movie that there's nothing in this movie that I think is acceptable for a real movie.
It's funny that
There's nothing good about it.
This guy directed the sequel as well.
Yeah.
Like, watching this movie and going, yes, this filmmaker should direct the sequel to this one, is just baffling to me.
And you know what they also could have done in the second half? You know, there are a ton of transmorphers, all of which look terrible, but that's not the real
No,
problem.
it doesn't matter, yeah.
But there are a ton of them, and there are a ton of people fighting them, and really what there should be are like 3 transmorphers, so that you almost get an emotional investment in those transmorphers.
Yeah, even if they're villains, and you just give them different stuff to do, and instead you get like this nothing.
It's just a big soup of stuff happening,
but
and
that's
nothing's
uninteresting.
happening.
Yeah, nothing is happening, and nothing you would recognize as a movie.
You know what? Okay, I think one reason why the movie is the way it is because it had to be 90 minutes.
Yes.
All these movies are 90 minutes, so clearly, contractually, that must be it. And they clearly panicked and said, well, whatever we have to do to get it 90 minutes, let's get 20 characters in here, and that'll pad it to 90 minutes.
That way we only have to pay actors for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And we could pay, like, them less because, like, if you have 20 actors and they're all eager to be on there and they only have to work, like, 2 days, like, it's probably cheaper than getting an actor and having him work 15 days.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, we don't know exactly, and I think we'll delve into more as we go along, but that same year, I Am Omega came out, and people will be like, what is that a ripoff of? Well, the classic Will Smith picture, I Am Legend.
And you see what they did there, because the Richard Matheson story that inspired it also inspired the 1970s film The Omega Man.
Starring Charlton Heston. That's a terrible Charlton Heston voice.
I love Woodstock so much. That was his classic line from that film, right? But they took Omega from that title and put it in the other title.
Yeah, they basically tell the same story, but in a much smaller version. And the first, 30 minutes of this movie, I was in.
Yes.
Because my expectations were lowered to, Asylum levels. I was excited because Mark Dacascos stars in it. I just like the guy.
Who is he?
He's an actor who in the 80s appeared in a bunch of martial arts stuff.
Okay.
He, Only the Strong, and he appeared in stuff like Double Dragon. But what really gave me an affinity for him is he appeared in Christopher Gaughan's films, Crying Freeman and Brotherhood of the Wolf, as a martial arts guy.
He's got a bit of a Dean Cain vibe to him in this.
Yeah, and he was known for the longest time as one of the best martial arts actors that was working in America, but unfortunately he came at a period where no one knew how to use him in the best way. I mean, this movie doesn't either. Sammo Hung said he was one of the best American fighters that he got to act with in martial law.
So I think you did a little research and found out what are supposed to be the best Asylum movies, and this is one that is generally considered one of the better ones.
No, not really. No.
Okay.
I only checked it out because of I like to see I Am Legend with Mark Dacascos starring it. I'd actually seen it back in my video store days and dismissed it instantly because I wanted the things that I liked. I've talked about this before. And this film just doesn't deliver. Watching it this time, right from the get-go, I was like, whoa, the director is telling a story without laying on voiceover or really bad editing, and he's just letting the camera do the storytelling.
Yeah, okay. I was impressed by that too. And I feel watching this movie that I'm kind of grading things on a curve.
Yes, we are.
So, good for an Asylum movie might be pretty mediocre otherwise, but the first 20 minutes of this movie where it's establishing this guy after the apocalypse, his day-to-day routine, and the way it communicates that he had a wife and child who died, the way it shows the house,
And, how he does things, what he's scared of, all doing it without him, straight out saying it.
Yeah.
And I should point out, this movie is horrifying looking. It's just ugly.
Dingy.
Yeah. The thing about Asylum movies is that a lot of them early on came in that period where digital technology wasn't at the point where it looks solid. So a lot of their early films look really rough, like I Am Omega does, where it's why is it so green? It hurts my eyes.
Yeah.
And again, I Am Omega, we keep saying the first 20 minutes because once the action starts going, it's pretty sloppily directed and edited. A lot of stuff happens.
I would say it's about on par with a pretty good Sci-Fi Channel original.
Which Asylum makes a lot of movies for.
Yeah. It has a lot of fun zombies in it.
Yeah, it does.
Fulci style zombies.
One thing that's good about Asylum is they give their films a lot of scope, and I think that's a lot into trailers that you can sell it if it looks like a bunch of stuff happens, even though it's obvious they don't have the time to do a proper martial arts fight where Mike Dacascos uses nunchucks to knock a lot of zombies out. But I was invested enough in just the basic storytelling that they had given for him that I wanted to see how it ended by the end. And that's a problem with a lot of these movies, which is I'm why should I care? Like, you're throwing stuff at me, but because it's all digital and it's kind of like sloppily shot with like a bunch of camera angles, it's very difficult for me to get invested in any way, shape, or form.
And as you said, the visual storytelling of this movie is pretty good in a way that it's not in Transmorphers. Transmorphers, the camera is very much parked down in every scene.
It's kind of shaky, which was very popular with like cinema and television at that time.
With 6 or 7 people crammed into the shot like a fucking 1912 movie.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving it too much. Because that makes me think of something like The Thing from Another World, where like everyone's very well posed. It's not like that.
No.
And we should point out that like Asylum got really popular when they made a film called Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus, because that was one of the first films that they made that just like got the cultural imagination. Like, people were like, this is crazy, can you believe it?
And it's strictly, the title and sharing the trailer on Facebook.
Which, like, a shark jumps out of the water, like takes a plane out of the air.
It's
like,
very much like a normie's idea of a so bad it's good movie.
And
it's so, I hate it so much because it's so like disingenuous,
And like the film itself, which was directed by a director I actually like, Jack Perez, is not that good. Like, I remember being so disappointed when I saw it. It's a lot of like repetitive CG shots where you see the same shot of the shark over and over again. A lot of people in like crummy looking colored like control rooms doing stuff because you could shoot the actor out in one day.
The idea of a shark fighting an octopus is not intrinsically funny to me.
No.
And
but you know what is funny? Sharknadoes.
Oh yeah, that's hilarious, isn't it? I mean, people watch those Sharknado movies to laugh at them, but what is the joke?
What's funny about it is that, like, I read an article written by a screenwriter who had pitched a bunch of stuff to Asylum for years and never got any of his pitches accepted. It's on crack.com. It's actually by an anonymous author. And what you see is, like, the producers of the Asylum films saying stuff like, listen, you gotta ground your comedy. Like, it can't be too over the top. And, like, we don't want multiple genres mashing up together. And, like, in that article, the would-be screenwriter's like, oh, what does this mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's going on? But, like, what the Asylum producers are saying does make sense. Like, they're notes that I would agree with when you're making something crazy like that. Like, don't make fun of the concept. Like, just do it straightforward.
That's the first rule of comedy.
Yeah, and if you do that, then people can accept it. Because people don't like to be reminded that what they're watching is dumb. It's interesting that something like Sharknado would pop as big as it did because it's just the concept itself that became a joke. Because if you watch the first Sharknado, it's not making fun of itself. But the second, third, and fourth, and fifth one, then they started like, oh, we're in on the joke.
Right.
And that's when it's even more like, ugh, disingenuous.
Hate it. So you watched 7 movies this week.
I did. I watched 7 Asylum films.
Okay, I watched 1 more.
Yep, and we're going to talk about it because we disagree about it.
But why don't you say some of the other ones you watched first?
So I watched Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. It's one that, when I worked in a video store, always captured my imagination because it was like Arthur Conan Doyle versus like a T-Rex, a squid, a metal dragon, a dinosaur, like a little one. I was like, oh man, this is going to be so much fun. And then it's not. Because this is an example of the Asylum doing something very competently to the point that there's no flair or personality or really fun. Like, it just has these things, but because you don't care, it's a slog to get through. I also watched Age of Dinosaurs, a 2013 picture, which is getting to the point where, like, they throw so much stuff at the audience. It's basically action-packed for the last hour. And it stars Treat Williams, favorite of mine, from such pictures as 1941, The Substitute, and the classic Deep Rising. But then gives them no personality. Like, there's no beats or, like, stuff really engaging. So it's just, like, dinosaurs killing people in L.A. It's humorless, which is, before Sharknado, is par for the course for them. And it's just kind of boring because it's all this stuff and you're like, well, I don't care about any of these characters. No one has beats. There's no setups or payoffs. So, like, why am I still watching this? But Age of Dinosaurs is getting to that level of where Asylum is now, that their movies are very technically okay. Like something like Death Racers, which was their ripoff of Death Race 2000, which co-stars the Insane Clown Posse.
Oh, no.
And that they get out of their cars 5 minutes into the race and spend the rest of it on foot, is at a technical level that, like, I would have done in high school, where it's, like, all over the place. And they've passed that, which is almost a little bit, like, sad, because there's no more, like, what are these decisions that they're making? Now it's like, oh, this is very well made. Like I watched another one called Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark from 2014. This one was fun because the screenwriter did know how to do setups and payoffs. It had scale. There was a lot of fun gags in it. It just still wasn't quite far enough to make me go like, I like this movie and I would recommend it.
Hearing all these titles makes my head hurt. It gives me a migraine.
But does it just make your head hurt because you know what the Asylum movies are? Because if you were 12 and someone told me that title, I'd be like, that would be the greatest movie ever!
Yeah, it's because, look, I'm all for a movie about transmorphers. I'm all for... You sent me a poster for one of them. What was it called?
Plane versus Volcano?
Plane versus Volcano.
Yes.
I love it. But I just know that they'll do a bad job with it.
Yeah, and that's just the frustrating part. Like, I read some articles about, like, that were written in big magazines about them, and there was a thing that, like, one of the producers gives notes to the director that are so harsh that it makes the directors cry. And I'm like, that's fine, that's good, but why isn't the result there? Like, because maybe we're talking about something that we want, that the Asylum has figured out we don't need to deliver. Like, if we do all this hard work and we try to make, like, the best, like, most funnest movie ever, it will sell as many copies as a technically competent,
it's like
movie.
Like Poverty Row.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, why should we make that effort?
And if anything, if they make the effort, it might risk... like some of their foreign buyers might not buy something that has more effort because it's different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, even the producer said, you know, we don't want people that have done stuff too much because then they may try and it may be like get out of our hands. Like, you may get a director who goes, no, I need 10 extra days to get this as good as I can get it. And the producers are like, this doesn't matter. Like, we just need a product that we can sell.
I hate this. This is so depressing to me.
I know. It really bums me out.
But, okay, we watched another movie. The version I watched of it was called Expendabeles 3.0.
Yes, that's the title at the beginning of it. It's mostly known in America as Mercenaries.
And it is an all-female Expendables ripoff. And the Bruce Willis character is basically played by Cynthia Rothrock. The villain is Bridget Nielsen.
Mm-hmm. And last seen in such films as Cobra, starring Sylvester Stallone.
And more recently on Flavor of Love with Flavor Flav.
Yes,
or was it Celebrity Big Brother? I can't remember.
One of those.
But the team of mercenaries that they assemble to go after Bridget Nielsen includes Zoe Bell, Vivica A. Fox, Christina Loken from Terminator 3, and somebody else who I'm forgetting.
And it was directed by Christopher Ray, son of podcast favorite Fred Olin Ray.
Wow, what pedigree.
I saw this movie, and I
had high-ish hopes for this one because, you know, the idea of an all-female Expendables movie, I'm not made of stone. Mm-hmm. I'm interested in that. And I do think that the cast is quite good, with the possible exception of Cynthia Rothrock, who doesn't have a lot to do and is a bit wooden in her scenes. But Bridget Nielsen as the villain really...
just eating the scenery. Everybody's having a ball in this movie.
Vivica A. Fox is having fun. They're all having fun. The action scenes are very kind of John Woo ripoff-ish. Mm-hmm. Most of the movie, so the plot is that Bridget Nielsen has kidnapped the president's daughter in the Middle East. And by the Middle East, I mean Los Angeles.
Yes, a abandoned prison in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the abandoned prison, which is clearly just the asylum warehouse and where we spend way too much time. Oh my God.
So I really like this movie.
Okay.
And Will said that he was bored. I wasn't bored at all. I felt the film hit all the beats that it's supposed to. And while we do spend a lot of time in that prison set, like, there's a bunch of stuff going on. They actually have a plan. They execute it. It's fun. Every character has something to do. Like, there's one that's a sniper. There's one that's a bomb expert who does stuff like pull a button off her shirt and roll it across the ground, which another character shoots with their pistol, which causes it to explode.
I think there were a lot more scenes than I would have liked of just characters sitting in this prison talking.
Yeah, but I didn't think there was that much, because if you break it down, that scene is maybe 10 minutes and it intercuts between all of them, because once they get to that prison, they set like a plan in motion where each one has a different thing that they have to do.
I think the action is also pretty bad.
The action is okay. Again, I'm rating this on the Asylum scale, but there's a lot of it. Zoe Bell gets a lot to do. When I saw the trailer, I assumed, oh, Zoe Bell shows up for one scene and then leave. Nah, she's the lead of this movie. And I found that it was just fun, like, because everybody on screen was having fun, and the director seems to be making like a visible effort. Like, there's actual physical squibs in the movie, which you never see.
That. Yeah, that was good.
So, like, it feels like everybody on this production was trying their hardest. And I think that the difference between me and you on this is like, I like this kind of trash action stuff.
Yeah.
That can do it at like a level of competency that most people would be like, nah, this is boring.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between both. Like if somebody said like, oh, is there like a fun Asylum film? I would recommend this one and then put a lot of like caveats on it.
I will say that it's better than it could have been.
Yes.
And the cast is pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, that's all really that it boils down to for me is like, as long as the cast is having fun, the director's making an effort, and the screenwriter like tried and then didn't just put all these elements on screen to like tell a fun story, then it's good enough for me.
God, there are a lot of things that I could be doing. I think that's what I think about when I watch it.
But I feel like you probably watch it out of the corner of your eye, too.
No, I watched it.
You gave it your full attention?
I gave it my full attention.
Maybe that was a problem then.
Maybe.
But the Asylum is still making movies. They seem to be getting sued more often over the last few years because, I mean, their mantra seems to have been like, we're such small potatoes. Like, what difference does it make that we're releasing a film called American Battleship when Peter Berg's Battleship is coming out?
We saw an interview with the two guys who run the company where they say that pretty much if they ignore the cease and desist letter most of the times, the big studios won't follow up because it's just not worth it.
But some of the companies, like that American Battleship one, they did come at them and they had to rename their movie. Age of Hobbits, they had to rename their film.
Age of Hobbits is a blatant copyright infringement.
It is. They tried to argue that hobbits have existed before then. They have made a TV show that plays on the Sci-Fi Network that's genuinely good called Z Nation. It's lasted for 4 seasons. Obviously, it was like a riff on Walking Dead. But what they do is they just go all in and they know how ridiculous the concept is, but they treat all their characters very seriously. Mm-hmm. And craziness can happen around the characters as long as the characters are grounded. So the show is super fun. And it really helps that the first 2 seasons, a lot of the episodes were directed by John Himes, the guy who directed the last 2 Universal Soldier films, and who also made like Dragon Eyes. He's a director I really like, and you can definitely see how his style helps that show. But it also makes me wonder, like, why wouldn't John Himes go direct an Asylum film?
Probably he doesn't get as much freedom, and he doesn't have the resources and the time and the respect that he feels he would deserve if he went to the Asylum. And yeah, there is a stink to it. It's not a prestigious brand.
And the fact that like he already made 2 Universal Soldier pictures, like it would be a step down, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though you look and you see like Mary Lambert, the director of Pet Sematary, has directed like, I don't know, like Giant Snake versus like Mega Lobster.
Why do that if you don't have to?
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Asylum, if you're listening to this right now, you can hire me. I'd be happy to come down and shoot stuff. I can edit. I can use camera. I can direct. Just ignore my co-host.
Yeah, ignore me. I would actually like to see you get a job at Asylum. I'd be interested in seeing how that would work out.
Listen, there's that Bumblebee movie coming out. We can make one called Yellow Jacket or Bumble Wasp. Super easy. The Transformer barely has to appear in it. Oh, you know, Alita Battle Angel, that new big James Cameron, Robert Rodriguez. Let's hit the market first with Alina Battle Demon, and it'll be like a cube kind of thing. It's like a robot girl. Mostly one room that we just redress every time. But, you know, I feel like Asylum hears pitches like me all the time, and that they can just sense like, we'd rather have someone we can trust. Like, we'd rather go back to someone who we've made movies with a bunch than some newcomer who's young and hot, which I'm none of those things.
You're just too good for the Asylum. Yeah, that's what it is.
That's probably what the email would say.
Yes.
But I'd be curious, like, do they want to make good movies or does it not matter?
I don't think they care. I think the producers don't. I think Fredel and Ray's son, who made Expendables or Mercenaries, whatever it was called, I think he tried.
Yeah, he tried.
And I think you can tell when they're... I don't think the guy who made Transmorphers tried, or else it would have been better.
Well, I can feel that, like, Age of Dinosaurs, the guy's trying, and Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark, the guy's trying. You know what I can tell? Commentary tracks on the Blu-ray.
Well, you know what? Anybody who has done shift work knows that not all work is passion work.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and that's the case here.
As the great David Dakota said once while being interviewed on the set of Sorority Girls in the Slime Bowl-orama, what is this movie for you? And he went, 2 weeks of work.
Yeah, there you go. And, you know, that's not so bad.
Nope.
So do we have any letters?
We do have letters, and as per usual, Mr. Asylum, you can email me at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. Like, I will make this movie for you.
Yeah.
I've directed 2 feature films.
Let Justin direct an Asylum film.
You can just give me whatever. Plane versus Volcano? 2? The volcanoing?
But unfortunately, Mr. Asylum isn't in the email inbox yet.
Not yet.
Who is
Listen,
there?
we've been emailed by Lizzie Borden. Next up, Mr. Asylum.
Nice. And then Tom Cruise.
Yeah, exactly. Our first email is from Steven, and it goes, Dear Justin and Will, congratulations on the show. It's truly warm, informed, and authentic experience. My top podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. I'm a screenwriting lecturer at Australia's National Film School. I cited you both recently in a class with master's student when P.T. Anderson came up. Thank you very much. We will go on tour as well. If any university wants to hire us to discuss movies, we'd be happy to. I'm not joking. We need money. This made me wonder if you had any advice on theory and practice for film students. Thank you again. Your discussion, introduction, and archiving is actually really important. Thanks, Stephen Davis.
Well, first of all, this is called consulting work, and it costs money. But
as someone who works at a university, you know all about this, right?
I do. But so, do you have
any theory that I would recommend?
Or any advice for approaching theory?
I've always been very distrustful of theory, and I think that's only because of my post-secondary education and the fact that I didn't get it, and the way people would talk about it was so disconnected from anything that I understood or liked or could feel passionate about that I was like, I don't know about this. So I've always been very wary of anything that starts with, in this text, I will discuss blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that
makes me throw the book away because no, thank you.
I mean, I love film theory.
Yeah.
I took a film criticism and theory class in my second year of university, and it introduced me to so many concepts that I still use today, whether it's the male gaze or whether it's Baudrillard's theory of the simulacrum. Like a good film theory class is it's like a philosophy class.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious about the context of this letter though, because a screenwriting class, is it like a film production class or
that's the difference, right?
Yeah. I think maybe a screenwriting class perhaps it's useful to know that Robert McKee stuff, so that you know the rules that you can later break. As much as I hate the Robert McKee stuff.
Or why don't you just go pick up Theory of Film by our man Krauser?
Yeah.
That's we could start listing the textbooks that Film 101 would give you, anything by David Bordwell. But really, the only Bordwell book that you should have on your shelf is Hong Kong Confidential.
Sorry, this hasn't been a very useful answer to the question, and I apologize.
But I've always said just go and watch movies, and then you'll understand what you like and you don't like, and just question yourself of why that is. And a lot of the best classes on film will get that. Or just join a film society.
I do think
drop out of university, kids.
I think that knowing more never hurts.
No, it never does.
Yes.
Stephen, if you can get Australia to hire us on for a semester to just teach a class, we'll create our own curriculum, and we'll have our film theory books at that point. Right. Our next letter is from Stuart Shivers, and he goes, Afternoon, gents. Your recent Patreon episode on auteur theory got me thinking, when is an auteur not an auteur? I'm currently rewatching all of Jean René's films and absolutely consider him an auteur. I do too. I wonder, though, how do we account for the sex films he made to pay the bills? Should they be considered part of his oeuvre, his artistic legacy, despite them being made under a pseudonym and seemingly with little conviction? Interested in your thoughts, Stuart. At its core, the auteur theory wants you to evaluate an auteur's work equally. So every film should have value and reflect the auteur's kind of preoccupations, passions, obsessions. It's impossible to do that.
It's easier for somebody like Orson Welles, who,
yes.
Mr. Arkadin may not be as good as Citizen Kane, but it's so obviously an Orson Welles movie. But I think even in Andrew Sarris's book, The American Cinema, when you look at the expressive esoterica section, he's talking about somebody like Phil Carlson. He'll say Phil Carlson only really starts to come into focus 15 years into his career. Mm-hmm. I think there are many, many filmmakers who you would consider distinct filmmakers who only at a certain point start to become distinct filmmakers.
Again, the auteur theory is not really a theory, and the biggest flaw of it is this, right? Is that you need to be able to go this movie, he worked at McDonald's for a month so he could pay rent.
Yeah.
That's why he did that.
Yeah.
And most auteur, really hardcore theorists, you can't do that because that would then break the reality that you're trying to form.
Yeah, and movies don't exist in a vacuum.
No, they don't.
You know, there are many factors in addition to the filmmaker that contribute to what they are, and those need to. So the auteur theory is like a good compass through film history, but it cannot be the only thing.
Like, you can watch a movie and go, well, I don't see anything that I know in Ulmer in this picture. So, like, obviously this was one that he just made for the money, and he did really fast between other things that he was passionate about.
But that's interesting too, because you can frame it in like what his life story was.
Yeah, you know, just don't be dogmatic about it. Like, that's what it comes down to. You can send us letters again at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. This week on our Patreon, you know, I may have made the news twice this week.
Hollywood Declue over here.
So we talk about the discovery that me and my friend made of a deleted shot from Mac and Me, and then we talk about how someone that I interviewed for an article ended up sending me a link to the lost version of Doris Wishman's A Night to Dismember, a film that was believed to not exist anymore, but now you can go and watch it on YouTube.
And it's all thanks to Justin. Actually, though.
Well, I mean, if you guys want all the details, you can listen to the Patreon episode. It's $5 a month, and you get 4 episodes a month and our entire back catalog. We're almost at 152, which means that triggers that commentary for the movie that we haven't mentioned. So please, if you're not a subscriber, do it. We really, really appreciate it. And this is the last reminder I'll make, because no episode will appear before then. Impossible Horror, the feature film that I directed, will be screening at the Film Society of Lincoln Center on Sunday, August 19th at 9:30 p.m. as part of the Scary Movies Film Festival. If you are in New York, if you are in America, I expect you there.
If you are in the world.
Yeah, I expect you there for me to be up on stage with such luminaries as Martin Scorsese and all those other people who were there. I will not be on stage with them. Well, who knows?
They'll be in the audience.
Yeah, what could be the guest people that will show up?
Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee, Woody Allen, all 3 of them in the front row. Francis Ford Coppola.
There's some problematic people there. I don't know how I'll have to deal with it, but I'll deal. And next week, what are we doing, Will?
Well, speaking of Spike Lee, we'll be talking about him.
Yep. His new movie, BlacKkKlansman, just came out in theaters.
So what better opportunity?
We'll be watching...
what do you want to watch?
You know what? We'll figure it out. I already actually made a list. Malcolm X, I want to watch. I want to watch like some of his lesser films, because I've seen all of his good ones, like Do the Right Thing. I actually watched School Days recently. The first one, She's Gotta Have It. But it's like the weirder offshoots, like She Hate Me.
Let's watch She Hate Me.
Yeah, we'll do She Hate Me,
okay.
Or like Get on the Bus, which was like an experiment that he made.
Oh yeah,
that's
I'm
all
curious
over the
about
place.
that too. Yeah.
So Spike Lee, what better people than 2 white guys to talk about him? But we'll do our best.
Can't wait.
And until then, my name's Justin McClue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening. So, Midnight Madness 2018 was just announced. Those are 10 films that play at the Toronto National Film Festival over 10 nights. And what do you think, Will?
I think a film festival is not where you would expect to see ghouls and shivers and spooks. And that's just the audience, folks.
Well, you know, I've been a loyal attendee to Midnight Madness for almost a decade now. Go to all the movies back when they had the Midnight Madness pass. This lineup was programmed by Peter Kaplowski. And I look at these movies and I go, I don't know, man. Like, do these belong in Midnight Madness? Like, where are the ghouls? Where are the goblins?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I happen to have Mr. Kaplowski with me right here. Could you come in, Mr.
Yes,
Kaplowski?
well, of course.
Whoa, Peter Kaplowski!
Justin, I just can't believe you backtalked me like that.
With him in the room.
I didn't think you were here.
And I mean, ghouls and goblins, I mean, we've got your Halloweens, we've got your Predators, we've got, not the sexual kind, but the alien kind.
Okay.
But I'm sure if you dig deep enough into the program there's probably some sexual predators as well.
Okay.
We are
you heard it here first.
we are playing the film Assassination Nation, which is all about a town that gets doxxed and everybody's dirty laundry gets unveiled, causing 4 young girls to rise up and kill the people who'd accuse them of being doxers.
Which movies do you think, Peter, looking at this list, you got your Predator by Shane Black, you got your Halloween by David Gordon Green, you have The Wind by, well, I don't know this director.
You have Plane vs. Volcano, you have Sharknado. You have the Transmorphers.
One of these days, I think Asylum will make it to Midnight Madness.
You think so?
I think they'll finally,
They'll crack it. It's the 1,000 monkeys and 1,000 typewriters.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, they'll just get it right, and they'll just find something that works. And though I might have already missed it, maybe I Am Omega had a shot.
No, I would not have played at Midnight Madness. So like, what are the movies that you feel need the hard sell because like people wouldn't recognize what these movies?
I mean, everybody's interested in seeing the new Halloween film and the new Predator, but
guys, listening to this, you're not going to get into the screening. Just forget it. So.
No, there'll be opportunities. I think Predator's playing 3 times, and it's also playing, when the festival ends, so you can just see it in a regular movie theater. If you don't want to see it amongst the ghouls and goblins that come out for midnight. All right, so I would recommend the emerging filmmakers in the program. Emma Tammy's The Wind, as you just mentioned, was a really, really great horror film in the tradition of both The Witch and Meek's Cutoff. I'd compare it to those 2 films, definitely, and I think she's definitely a talent to watch. It's her first fiction feature, but she comes from a documentary background.
Ooh.
And the other film is The Standoff at Sparrow Creek, which is done by the production company that did Brawl and Cell Block 99. This is also a first-time filmmaker. It was a script that was on the blacklist for a few years. Really, really bold film noir style thriller. I've just compared it to more of a David Mamet play, so don't go in expecting a lot of bullets to fly. Just expect to be nervous about when the said bullet might fly.
How does it compare to the Blacklist script about the dark and gritty Willy Wonka?
Well, for similar reasons, it took a long time for this movie to get made, because it is also dark and gritty.
My favorite Blacklist script is probably Cop Out. I hope we'll be seeing the 10th anniversary screening next year.
Cop Out was a Blacklist script?
It was,
I think it was probably a Blacklist script entirely for the title A Couple of Dicks.
Yes, that's right.
Like, I'm sure, basically a Hollywood reader read that title, said, oh, that's such a clever title, and just kept it on an agent's desk forever.
I haven't read it, but there is that Blacklist script about Stephen King making Maximum Overdrive. Oh. At the time, he was, really coked out and, crazy.
That sounds amazing.
I have a few friends that have read that. They said it was pretty entertaining.
But there's another movie. You're playing a Bollywood film, Peter? What is this? Aren't these so long?
Fortunately, this one does come in under 2.5 hours.
Yes.
2 hours and 10, to be precise. This film really endeared me. It's very much in the tradition of a Stephen Shammola Thai comedy.
Yeah, it's called The Man Who Feels No Pain.
And it directly quotes Jackie Chan films and Shaw Brothers movies, and so the Midnight Madness has always been a program that celebrates Hong Kong action films, and it was exciting to play our first Indian film and have that Indian film be a tribute to Hong Kong action film. So
that's the one I want to see.
Yeah, and it was choreographed by favorites of mine, Eric Jacobus, and who choreographed and stars in a little indie film I saw 15 years ago called Contour. And I just found it out when one of the other choreographer on it actually posted on Facebook. He's like, "Oh, a film I worked on is playing Midnight Madness," and it makes a lot of sense if you see the action scenes in the movie.
That's totally true. And the film, Eric Jacobus, some people might be familiar with his short films, which have played the festival circuit a lot and were kind of viral hits. Rope-a-Dope, I believe, was
Rope-a-Dope, the Groundhog Day fighting one where he repeats the same day over and over again. He does video game fight moves in real life. Really fun stuff. So,
and if I can recommend one other title that might be off most sort of cult films radar, film fan radar, is Diamantino, which I'm closing the festival with. It's a really silly satire that I've compared to the work of both John Rodgers and Greg Araki and also Ernst Lubitsch, and it is at midnight because I just think it is such a...
Ernst Lubitsch?
Yeah, well, they actually...
those first two, I'm following you, you.
This movie apparently was directly inspired by the filmmakers Gabriel Abrantes and Daniel Schmidt, who are actually more... comfortable in an avant-garde space.
Yeah, they do wavelength stuff usually, don't they?
Often. Their films have played the Wavelengths program, and but they said they conceived this movie after watching both Lubitsch films and Sullivan's Travels, and it's about a soccer player who loses his mojo, so to speak, when he learns what the concept of refugees are, and it just depresses him so much that he can't play soccer, and it's all about how he gets that mojo back, and
he solves the refugee crisis.
Both the refugee crisis and the destabilization of Europe from neo-fascists.
Yeah, wow.
It's pretty epic and ambitious, and I think totally in the spirit of Midnight, so I really hope people stick it out all the way from The Predator to Diamantino every night.
Well, folks, you heard it here first. Zombies, killers, Draculas, and Frankensteins, and folks, that's just the audience.
Wait, did we miss any
made that
movies?
joke 3 times.
I mean, let's be honest, Peter's not really here. We just hit play on the recording he makes for interviews and he just rolled through them.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the films that didn't make it to midnight.
Oh, yeah.
You know how many journalists have asked me that question?
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to answer? Like, you can't answer that question.
I know, of course not. I literally felt like, this is a problematic thing to say. I felt like Donald Rumsfeld on that episode of Opie and Andy.
Yeah.
when Louis C.K. Tries to get him to admit
That you're a lizard person?
lizard person, or rather, would he bomb Paris if he had enough intel? And I remember he said, "Can you imagine the headlines that would be in tomorrow's paper if I answered that question?"